All right, so when I submitted this talk, I called it The Magic of Vue and Vite on Mobile. And I initially wrote this talk for ViteConf 2023, back in October. So a lot of things happened between October and now in mobile. Basically, I want to reframe this as native because we had a surprise from Apple. We got an Apple Vision Pro. So how many of you, and I can actually see a lot of you, how many of you bought one? Wow. I did, yeah. 0, right? Okay. So, so while we may not all be hyped about it, mobile got really hyped about it. And we saw a huge influx in the open source contributors from NativeScript and Tauri and Ionic kind of experimenting with what a future device might look like. So we're not doing just straight iPads anymore. We have this idea of 3D. How do we play with that? So really quickly, hello. My name is Jessica Sachs. I work full-time writing free open source software at Ionic. I previously led the development of Cypress component testing. I'm most known for my testing stuff, I would say. And I'm also Vue ecosystem kind of adjacent, I would self-describe. So I started in the Vue testing ecosystem and then quickly went to Cypress. You'll find me kind of lingering in the discords, is how I would describe myself. Also, Faker.js core, if anybody remembers that. Yeah? All right. Giggles. I would also like to say thank you to, actually, Jilson. Jilson, among being the MC today, is the Vue Toronto organizer. And you might have noticed that I don't look like that. I have short hair. Yeah? I have short hair because I went through 3 brain surgeries in the last 4 months. And I've been a long-time speaker on the Vue conference circuit, and at Vue Toronto, and at Vue Amsterdam. Last year, I missed Vue Amsterdam because I started having a lot of seizures. I passed out. I actually passed out at a speaker dinner at Vue Toronto, and Jilson grabbed me, and Eduardo was there as well, and I felt completely comfortable with all of the people that we have in our community. And I wanted to give a big shout out to the people I've got to spend like the last 6 years with, building relationships. So thank you so much to Jilson and the rest of the organizers. Yeah. Made a huge difference in my life. All right, so this talk was 10 minutes when I gave it at ViteConf, and mainly it was a flex. It was a flex talk on how simple it is to use Capacitor. It's an Ionic Capacitor. It's an open source WebView-based framework in order to build mobile web PWAs. PWAs, we'll get there. Yeah? Yeah. And on Android devices, right? So this was the original talk. And when I gave it, Capacitor was the only way really to build cross-platform web, mobile, using Vite. NativeScript is only Webpack. We'll talk about that in a bit. So what happened? A lot. Mainly, Vision OS sparked everybody, I mentioned. And we can see a lot of users of Vision OS, yeah, production users. All right, so, and we'll also talk about some of the news. Apple, you may have heard, right, will stop supporting critical mobile PWA features for EU users, and they'll release iOS 17.4 by March 6th when the DMA Act becomes law. And so, second question, we're going to pivot here. So why think about native and when? We're at a web development conference, right? We're not at WWDC. We would also not be talking about the DMA Act if we were at WWDC. But most companies have problems that ship to web first, have features that they want to build on web first, and mobile second, right? So let's frame this differently. I'll call it platform first, development versus content-first development. Yeah? Platform-first is when you want to use a lot of sensor data. You want to use a lot of the latest features, and you're primarily going to be building an integrated experience with your mobile device and or dinosaur AR. You generally know very early on if you're going to be building platform-specific stuff. Content first, I would say, is what most of us do here. Here are some examples, as I would consider platform first on the left and content first on the right. So show of hands, how many people are building platform first apps? You're building Internet of Things apps, thermometers that plug into your phone. I did that once. Went to an actual Apple store, sold those. Games, it's like nobody, right? That was the 0 hands. B2B apps, CRM apps, keep your hand up, please. Yeah, love it. Calendar apps, e-commerce. Give me an e-commerce hands, yeah. And everybody has terms of service login pages. So everybody here really is building content first. And that's great for this talk. Big shout out to Evan Bacon, who talked to me this last Saturday and gave me these terms to use at this talk. He actually lives in Austin. I'm from Austin, Texas. It's weird to say, I just moved there. But, so I got to meet him in real life, and he gave me the download of what he would recommend for people who aren't shipping React Native, which is a lot of us. Or a lot of us would possibly like to not ship React Native if we're out of VueConf. I also talked to Rich Harris and Ryan Carniato, who's going to be in town. Ryan's going to be in town tomorrow. I don't know if he's already here. And I asked them, I was like, what would you recommend for non-React users to build in Solid, to build in Svelte, to build in Vue? And they said a technology that I will get to in a moment. So, circling back, we're all building content first, generally good for web devs. So, I think that we would like to perhaps take all of the work that we did on web and not have to rewrite it for mobile. Yeah? Seems legit? Great. So what are the answers for how you ship your code that you've already written onto a phone, even a Vision OS device, a phone or a tablet? So there's 3 frameworks. You may have heard of them. Show of hands for Capacitor. Yeah, okay, there's some woos. Show of hands, Tauri. Yeah, did you know Tauri could run on mobile? Yeah? All right. It's beta, just now recently actually beta. You're absolutely correct. Native script. Yeah. All right, so native script, we'll talk about first. Native script is probably the coolest technology that I've run into. However, it uses Webpack. So I don't want to say it's disqualified from the magic of mobile with Vue and Vite, but you don't get a lot of the same HMR. The advice from the native script community is to decouple as much as possible. But the TLDR is that you can't easily ship a Nux 3 app on your phone. So all the cool Nux things that we've learned yesterday and last week, hopefully. All the cool Nux things that we learn, we can't take with us just straight out of the box. That's kind of a bummer. However, you can do cool stuff with it, like really cool stuff with it. This is a live stream from November 3rd, I think, where Ryan Carniato did a deep dive. This is a 5-hour stream, and it's phenomenal. Watch it on 2x. I wish there was a 3x speed option on YouTube. But this was a phenomenal YouTube video, best live stream I've ever watched, I think. And you can do the same with Vue. The bummer here with Vue is that it's still in RC, and it's been in RC for a while. So if you want to build something amazing, none of you have like Vision OS devices, never mind. So if you want to go home and build something amazing in Vue 3 on native, this is a really good option. NativeScript is great for that. However, there's no clear path to take your native-only code and then put it on web. So if you would like all the things, NativeScript is not a good choice. Technically, it's very interesting, especially with their concept of marshalling, which is a direct mirroring of native APIs. You can actually use like the Android native APIs word for word and just copy paste those into Google and get the full documentation, and it is one-to-one. So for debugging and for people who aren't as familiar with the native APIs, it's a great, great tool. But it does not work on the web, which is not helpful for a web dev. Cool. So Tauri. Tauri is awesome. Tauri started as a desktop replacement for Electron, and the way it works is it takes your user system browser and it decides to reuse it. Instead of downloading an entire instance of Chromium, they're like, you probably have Chrome on your computer. Yeah. And so they make a nice performant Rust-based and JavaScript-based application environment. So over IPC, you can take as much of your JavaScript code and communicate back to Rust, or you can write a lot of your code in Rust and then communicate to JavaScript. It gives you a sliding scale. Unfortunately, you have to get familiar with a lot of Rust tooling, and that can be intimidating. I don't think a lot of us here are very familiar with Rust. Show of hands. Yeah, that's more than I expected. Do you want to be familiar with Rust is a secondary question. And me too. It's cool. Tauri is also interesting because while on mobile in their beta version, they use web views, just like Capacitor does, and we'll get to Capacitor in a sec. They also have the ability to target desktop, which is really powerful for a lot of nicer UX applications. So if you want to build taskbar applications that are also just straight up UI, Cypress is actually built using Electron. It's very similar. I advocated to swap out Cypress's Electron with Tauri, but it was very early days of Tauri at the time. So I should have reduced the install size by like 380 megs. Would have been great, but didn't get to do it too early. All right, so Tauri, WebView based for mobile. Beta V2 docs are still pending, but they will come. And Tauri is also probably going to target more things than Capacitor ever will, but I would wait on it. I think for greenfield projects, it's probably stable enough. And they have a very good first-party plugin ecosystem that matches Capacitors, which is very community-driven. So I would give Tauri a try. You can use it in prod if you're unafraid of Rust, is what I would say. And you're also unafraid of the IPC mocking layer. They give you a lot of utils for it that you have to use to say, hey, I'm going to make this fetch request in Rust. Don't be afraid. And here's the result of it. So you have to kind of bridge that gap in your tests as well. And that can be a little bit difficult for people who aren't very familiar with testing and mocks. So finally, Capacitor. I work at Ionic. Ionic has been around since 2012, and the first Ionic package I could find was from 2015. Let's see how big this is. Yeah, that's big enough. So we power 15% of all App Store apps and thousands of critical enterprise apps. That's huge. I'm actually really proud of those numbers. And Capacitor is also WebView based. So I would say between Capacitor and Tauri, they're fairly equivalent, and I think Tauri will be huge. And I think Capacitor will continue to be huge as well. But its scope is limited versus Tauri, which is going to target a lot of other physical devices. Sick. Capacitor also has no Rust component. Capacitor uses Swift and Kotlin and Objective-C. Yeah. There are things that I wanted to talk about, but I'm not going to get to. But these are common architecture trade-offs that each of the things that I've mentioned, and React Native and React Strict DOM, have had to contend with while deciding what they're going to do. It'll also impact you when thinking about how you're going to take your existing app, let's say you have a Nuxt 3 app, and convert it to a mobile app, perhaps. You can decide if you're going to go SSG with it, if you're going to just dist everything and have a great offline experience, because everything's already, in theory, great offline experience, because undoubtedly you make a fetch call somewhere in there. Which, actually, I advocate for a very, kind of like an incremental static build. So you get first pass is statically generated, but then you also get a lot of tooling. It's called ISR. It's in Nuxt. It's very heavily championed by Next, but it's also in Nuxt, as with most features. The Nuxt team does a really good job of building all of the Next features, I think, very shortly after Next does. So I find the docs to be interchangeable for most of it. Cool. And now, the news. So we covered a lot of this. Last 4 months, very exciting. Last 3 weeks of February, I had to rewrite this talk so many times. So these are all the things that happened in the last month. The one from February 26th I was told about by Guillaume, who's going to be up next. He was telling me, he's like, oh, did you hear? I was like, no, I didn't hear. I was flying. So February 1st, a security researcher discovered this iOS 17.4 beta. He thought it was a bug where notifications broke for PWAs. He was like, this isn't right. He reported it. February 2nd, Tauri released beta after a year of alpha development. Super exciting. And then the Apple Vision Pros arrived, and everybody got super hyped. And you will see native script demos for Vue. There's a lack of GitHub repos and examples of how universal code would work. So there is an example on Twitter, and I couldn't find a repo. And when I reached out, it was kind of difficult to get answers on the full repo of WebDev Plus for native script. But you'll see a lot of increased velocity in development, I think, over the next 2 months or 3 months. February 15th, Apple was like, yeah, we did do that. Yep, that's how we're going to do it. And then the EU was also like, we're going to look into this as well, because that seems a little aggressive and anti-competitive, maybe a little anti-competitive. So I would say that the future of PWAs is uncertain, and also we have fancy new devices to target, and everybody's hyped. Yep. And what does it mean? All right, we know the news. What does it mean for you? If you're relying on PWA support, anybody? PWAs is super important to your users. Wow, all right. So you're going to be really interested in Capacitor and in Tauri. Capacitor for its ease. I don't think I'm going to have time for I might have time for my quick demo. But you're going to really enjoy how easy it is to take an existing SSG app and just make it a mobile app. It's like 4 lines of CLI code. It's really tiny. And I also did it with Elk. People familiar with Elk, the Nuxt 3 project, and PWA? So it was an effort championed when Twitter was acquired, probably in 2022. Yeah, November 2022. The Nuxt 3 team, very, very quickly, created a PWA and website to replace, it was like a client for Mastodon, basically. And it's one of the heaviest open source apps. If you're ever looking for where the latest and greatest Nuxt 3 features are, Elk is a really good place to start. So I was like, heavy Nuxt 3 app, let's see if we can make it a Capacitor iOS app. And that was a really cool experiment. I got to work with Daniel Rowe on that. He was very helpful. So here are all the news articles for the dates I just mentioned. This is the original tweet. And then TechCrunch saying, yeah, here's Apple's response. And by the way, notifications also no longer work. That's the #1 feature that PWAs need to have, I think. That's the point. Cool. So really quickly, we'll be able to do it with a WebView-based framework like Ionic. And this was a question mark based on how much time I have left, and I think I got it. I think I got it in. So I'm going to live code for you. I just set this up while I was sitting on the floor while Tim was rocking out. I was just like, am I going to get this demo done? And PNPM, even with its cache, was like retrying. I got nervous. I was like, why is my bun install taking a long time? Bun's supposed to work the same. I've already installed this globally. Whoop. And let's try it. All right. What's on my screen right now? A secondary monitor? Yes. All right. Displays. Yeah. DIS. PLAS. LAYS. Built-in display, and then let's see if we can mirror it. Use as mirror. Yep, cool. All right, so in the beginning, there was Visual Studio Code. Pew pew. And then we have Vuejs Amsterdam. So I'm going to start with Vite. Is anybody familiar with Vite? A few people? Great. It is my favorite starter template by our own Anthony Fu, who'll be speaking later today. And it has just enough for me to get what I want out of a website. It has dark mode, light mode, sorry for the flashbang, and I18N. It's lovely. And there are so many languages here, actually. Also, it has Shiki. So if you want a blog template, Vite is your friend. And also, if you go to the bottom here, it'll say, hey, it was made back in the day. If you're looking for a better DX, go to Next 3. I still love it, though, for demos when I'm doing work. So I cloned a repo, and with a few commands that look like pnpm add at capacitor, CLI, there's like 3 of these that you have to do. And then you type in pnpm cap init. And it goes and it makes a capacitor config file. And I've changed one line of code here. I've set the URL to be the Vite URL. Super quick. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start our local host. Here it is. Local host. Great. And it would be really cool if we could, let's turn it off really quick. Let's turn off our capacitor server thing. And we're going to go to our simulator. And we're going to spam click. Let's see. Aw, I fixed it already. Usually this is supposed to show off the bug. Index.html. There we go. So on iOS, there's a bug. There's a feature. On iOS, there's a feature for people who struggle to read small fonts. And they say that, hey, you should have a minimum body text size of 16 pixels. I actually don't know if they use points or pixels at this point. But basically, if I spam click on this language thing, it doesn't work like desktop does. It zooms in for accessibility. And what you can do to fix this, let's do it really quickly. Drag this to the side, just to show off the speed. And say maximum scale, maximum scale is 1. Yeah, that's all you have to type in to get this iOS stuff to work. And all of a sudden, the bug's fixed. We're using Vite to get that rapid HMR. You don't get this when you're working with Webpack HMR. And let's see if we can change a color. App view. We got colors. We got styles. Let's say we're going to make the background. Oh, God, am I going to really do that to you? Let's say dark pink. Deep pink, excuse me. Oh boy. Whew, I know, it's exciting. I changed a color. We're all so stoked. All right, so 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Great. So you can see desktop and mobile updating at the same exact time. I'm very excited with this, or very happy about this. And I think that's all I wanted to show you, that you can bug fix as fast as you can in a desktop as you can in mobile. And I think that's pretty cool, because I always struggled, when I did mobile development, I always struggled to very quickly fix things in mobile. And I would often leave it untested. By the way, you do get, I think if I hit done here, you do get the Vue dev tools. And they kind of work on WebKit. Like, it's pretty decent. All right, so I'm at time. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you. And if you would like to find me online, you can find me at Jessica Sachs on Twitter or Discord at jess.sh. My name is a shell script. And yeah, hit me up if you want to talk about mobile or testing. Yeah.